Hello, everybody. My name is Seth Leaf Pruzansky, and I'm making this video for NDE Diary, YouTube channel that focuses on near-death experiences. So, this is me recounting an experience that I had in NDE when I was 18 that rocked my world and influenced everything that happened in my life after that. So I was born and raised in the woods of Maine in this amazing place. We were halfway up a mountain. My mother and father were growing food. We were living off the land. They had friends living all around this mountain, and they all had kids. And I had one brother, and we grew up. It was amazing. It was just like the perfect childhood. And so by the time I was 18, I'm working in the garden, tilling it up, getting it all ready to start putting in seedlings and just do it, make a living, growing food, live off the land, and make a little bit of money from him just so we could continue to buy food. So I'm out there, digging the garden, tilling it up, sweating bullets, and all of a sudden my heart just started, beating really hard. And so I'd sit down for a minute, catch my breath, breathe slowly, try to calm my heartbeat down, and then I'd get up again. And again, it kept happening. And before I knew it, it was like it wasn't calming down. It was just, I'm scared. I'm yelling out to my friend who was there. Nobody came out. Nobody came to help me at all. And so I'm out there. It felt like I was having a heart attack. It hurt so bad, and it was only getting worse and worse and worse. And now here's the interesting part, because I wasn't on any drugs at all. I was just having what felt like a heart attack. And it was so extreme, and it was so severe, and it kept happening. And before I knew it, the trees, the dead beavers, the little blades of grass, the plants, it felt like everything was pointing at me and saying, "You destroyed this planet. You have killed all these animals, the beaver." Every bug, every natural thing, flora or fauna in the area were all pointing at me. And so it was this really brutal guilt trip going on, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. And I was scared as hell, literally. And it kept getting darker and more mean and nasty and terrible. And when just seeing the way nature was blaming me and doing all that, then I started to see literal spirits. It wasn't as clear as, looking at me through this screen right now, but they were there. I could hear them, I could feel them. There were Native American ones. There was other spirits of people that had been on that land before who had died near it. It was so brutal. And I felt like everything was attacking me. And so I'm trying to get up, and every step I took, I was being dive bombed by spirits and just being so attacked and so freaked out. And I kept getting more and more afraid. So on top of having whatever this was, this heartbeat that was just going out of nowhere, whether it was a heart attack or a stroke or whatever was happening, it was exacerbated so much because of all the spirits and nature hating me and blaming me for what our species has done. But what was happening to me is that life force was trying to leave my body. And as it was leaving, all of these spirits and the antagonistic voices and blaming and shaming and everything that was happening, it made me feel like I was going to hell. And in fact, I was sure that I was on my way to hell. And that scared the hell out of me, literally. As I'm going out of my body. I could feel myself convulsing. And as I'm going out of my body and out into what I can only describe, it was like a purgatory of some sort. My sense of self in my body was leaving, and so that was gone. Like, there was no more Seth. I disappeared in that. And that led into, there was still awareness though. I was still aware, or whatever, this life force, this soul was aware of something. And it went into this zone where there was this energy, my soul or whatever, and it still had that intelligence that knows how to work the body and keep all of that going. And it was there, but it was in like a cosmic court, I call it. I don't know what else to call it. I went into this place where that life force was there, and it was like, it felt like a trillion eyes, maybe infinite eyes, all watching me, like, you, like. And so that energy is just like, it's all discombobulated, and it's like, trying to fit into that. And as I was in that situation, aware as this being, my entire life flashed before my eyes. I mean, from right to that minute in reverse, everything I've experienced in this world, I'm talking like, and I was conscious of all of it. You know, this energy was conscious of it. And so from right to that point where I was having that near-death experience, everything in my life split second, like, just happened. And it was like weighing kind of negative, you know, but it didn't stop there. It started going through all these past lives, just boom, entire lifetimes, just in the blink of an eye. And I was conscious of every single part of it, and it kept doing it. Past lives, just going back and back and back. And this energy that was there, aware of all this, it was like too much for it to take. It couldn't process the amount of it. And it felt like that energy was starting to have its own convulsion. Like, it was literally starting to just like blow up. And there was a knowing that whatever I was being shown, all these past lives and everything, that I don't remember that. I don't know who those people are. I don't know if that's my life, like, or my lives. I have no idea what that was, but somehow I was being held accountable for it. You know, the scales of justice, like God or the universe, whatever, Jesus, you know, Buddha, whatever God is to people, whatever this life force is, we all have it. And again, like, it can do miraculous things. It already is doing miraculous things. It's operating all these complex systems of the body. It's hyper beyond genius intelligent. And so in that zone of where I consciously disconnected from who I was into this awareness of this energy form, and being, you know, held accountable for all these past lifetimes. And it wasn't just human lifetimes. It was going through like all of these, like, there were animal lifetimes, it went back to like the purity of elements, you know, like the lifeline of living creatures, flora, fauna, trees, you know, the lifeline of elements, wind, fire, rain, like all of it was part of it. And the whole time all this was happening, the scales of justice were tipping. Like, you did a lot more harm than you did good, especially in total of the whole thing. And that amount of information was so much, so strong, and I could not deal with it, you know, or whatever. This energy couldn't take it. And so it literally exploded. It's hard to know the timeline of how all of this took place, but it was hours and hours and hours of just going through all of this. And all of a sudden that energy reformed and awareness came back on. And I was still in this place where all of these beings, all these eyes, they're all watching me. And I'm talking about feeling exposed, like a disembodied spirit just in the midst of all this chaos and all these other beings that, that were attacking me. They're around, they're like dive bombing me, they're attacking me, they're blaming, like just like a movie. I mean, crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. And I was not at all prepared for any of that. And so all of those spirits that were attacking me and accusing me and just, like you're going to hell, all the freaky kinds of things that you can imagine, all of that was happening. And these spirits kept just attacking and attacking. And my life force was there. And then I started having consciousness back in my body. But it wasn't like, okay, or now I'm back, everything's good. I kept phasing into the perception of this body. And it was so intense because all those spirits that were antagonizing me, they were in this other realm or dimension or whatever you call it. And they were also in this dimension, whatever you want to call that, weird life, daily life. And they were in both of it. And so as I kept fading in and out from these different dimensions back into this one in this body, and they were so brutal. When I finally came to a little bit more and I could move, all of that stuff was there. All that evil, all of that judgment, everything that I was being accused of followed me back into this body and into this world. And as I was starting to come to terms with what happened, I mean, the feeling of it was like, wow, I just literally went to hell and got cursed, and now I'm back in this body, in this world, with all of that. I brought the curse back into the world. And, as I started thinking oh my God, or did I just totally become the worst degree of schizophrenia that there ever could be? I didn't know. I had no idea. And I had hardly any composure. I couldn't hardly walk at all. My equilibrium, everything was just totally off sync. And I started screaming for my friend because the guy who owned the farm wasn't there, and he had other workers too, and it was just me and my other friend there. And my friend, he heard me screaming, but he didn't do anything. He just let me do it and go through it. And then, as I'm trying to walk and fall over, and I got hurt really bad, blood and cuts and all kind bruises all over me. It was brutal. It was my body took a beating. But I was calling out for him, and he wasn't answering. And so the guy who owned the farm had this big giant house that was it was a house and a barn. And, there's straw bales all through it, chickens, goats, animals walk right in and out of the house, the barn. It's just how he lived, and I went in and I'm screaming. I'm begging God to save me, begging and pleading and just please help. God save my life, please, and so my friend's in there and he's sitting down, just motionless. He's just sitting right there, ignoring all of it. He's just in a state, his legs are crossed, and he wasn't meditating, he was just sitting there. He wasn't looking at me. It was he was looking through something. And I tried, I was yelling at him. He wouldn't respond. He wouldn't do anything at all. He just sat there. And then I collapsed in just sheer exhaustion and terror. And as I was laying on that floor, I'm curling up because these spirits are all attacking me. And I just heard a voice. It wasn't in English, and it wasn't his voice, but something said, "You know what this is." And, being dive bombed by all these spirits and all of these accusations of being, a terrible soul and deserving of being cursed and going to hell. I couldn't hear, I heard this voice, or more accurately, I felt this message come through of, "You know what this is." And then, I don't know, after 10 minutes later, it did it again. And when it said, "You know what this is," and I don't know if it was a language, but that's what it meant to me. It said, "You know what this is." I'm going to cry. And in those moments, I just somehow was able to acknowledge what was happening. I don't know how I did it. It seemed impossible. The amount of torture I was feeling from all these other spirits, the amount of information that even my soul couldn't process, and that I still couldn't process in this body. When I felt that voice, or whatever it was, saying, "You know what this is," in those moments, I just felt something in me, and I acknowledged it, and I said to myself, "Wow, I do know what this is." And then everything just immediately changed. Just totally changed. All of a sudden, I'm in my body. There's no pain, there's no fear, there's nothing at all. I'm in my body, and I'm back, and I'm feeling like a miracle just happened, because it did. And everything's a miracle anyway, as we know, or anybody can figure out if they analyze or be the observer of their own life experience. And those spirits that were attacking me, they suddenly turned into, I don't know, angels, spirit guides. I don't know, what do you call it, And they would come up to me. Not only were they not attacking me, but they were like introducing themselves to me. And each one was, they would come up to me, and I realized that I knew them and I remembered them. And when I would look at them, it was like every face that's ever existed was on them. Every animal that's ever existed was in them. They were these beings that were just made of everything. And it was the amount of torture that I experienced up until that point changed. And they wanted me to know how much they loved me and how much they were looking out for me. I'm sorry. I haven't talked about this for a while, and so I knew these beings, and they were like, "We want to show you something." And I was, I'm all in at that point. And they took me. They were like with me. They're there energetically. They didn't have to touch me. It was all happening at the level of energy. And they said, "Do you trust us?" And at that point, yeah, they were nothing but like the most evolved degree of love that I still can't even fathom. Like it's so mind-blowing what happened that I've had no choice but to surrender to it, because it's impossible to understand. And all the help that I ever got after to try to make sense of it, nobody could do it, So I trusted them. I went with them, and they began to show me all these different layers and levels and dimensions of life, life on here in this world, in these bodies, and what it's most closely related to, and what the building blocks of it all that allow it to happen are made of. And so they kept showing all these different geometries, I guess. They're like living geometric fields, and they're always there. They're all through all of our bodies. It's always doing it. They're always there. It's how life sustains itself. It has its own internal energy-based structure. And that's how we're able to be in these bodies. Because again, like, the body is so far beyond intelligent. And where does that intelligence come from? And so I was learning that that intelligence came from these living geometric fields. And they're in everybody, they're in everything, they're everywhere. And as they would show me these different geometries, there was a part of me that knew this. It knew this whole process. I knew exactly what was happening. And they kept showing me different living geometric fields and shapes and how they relate. And I knew them. And so when I would acknowledge that I knew it, it would go to higher, different dimensions and levels of it. And it kept doing it over and over. And the geometries got more and more complex. And as they got more complex, I wasn't able to make sense of it. It didn't, like, this soul didn't, it wasn't at that level of being able to perceive these complex geometric signatures of the building blocks of life, you know, like. And so as far as I went, and then I couldn't get into that, it didn't matter at all. They were like, okay, like, you have evolved. You are made up of, it's, and these are tears of joy, because it was like, at that point, they made it clear that they've always been with me, and that they're pretty much always with everybody, but that hardly anybody pays attention to them. And I was so open and receptive to them, and I was just so, like, talk about ecstatic bliss or being exalted, like, or revelation, like, they were showing me all of the evil and everything and pretending that's what they were. I don't know if it's even the right way to explain this. None of it's easy to explain at all. But they basically were seeing where I was at, you know, to whatever degree that my soul had evolved, or whatever any of that is. It's hard to use English, or probably any language that are spoken by our races, even though it seems like there's countless modes of communication and language that are accessed mostly through dormant sensory perception abilities that are in every single one of us, but that haven't been activated for a long time. And so people are functioning on just a very minute capacity of perceptual awareness. And they basically were like, they were just everything that I ever thought or knew about myself, any question that I'd ever had about anything, all of it just was there. All the solutions to everything happening in our world, how humans interact with this world, and how we're also out of touch with our inner nature, all of that was being showed to me in a way of, like, just the way they were blaming me earlier. The natural world was blaming me. In this regard, they were, like, showing me, like, this is how you work with everything happening in this world. And I kept just, like, they were showing me everything, you know, answers to questions that I'd never asked. It seemed like answers to questions that probably no one has ever asked. Everything was there. Everything was self-evident. Everything was obvious. And they showed me how this soul comes from a place where I can only describe it as the web of life. And it's a living field where it is so powerful. And all my ancestors were there. Everybody and everything and every sensation, anything that anybody needed to know about themselves was there. And in that regard, it is, you are saved. You are literally saved. And all of these, not only are all these beings in all these different dimensions and working with it, but they work with lots of other different, even physical beings that have been on this planet and that probably still are. I'm not going to name names because it's not for me to do that. But I know what it is. And I'm in awe and humbled by it every moment of my life ever since that happened. I was 18 years old, and now I'm way older than that. I'm decades older than that. And it's been with me ever since. And I've survived through things since all of that happened that most of my closest friends have passed away from. And I've experienced terrible tragedies, but that I was able to bounce back from and be of assistance to my fellow humans and our lives here, you know? Oh my gosh. So, if anybody wants to read more about it, my book is actually, I'm giving it away for free for people who want to get the PDF. It's called The Fight to Enlight, and if you go to my website, SethLeaf.com, you click on the free book, then I'll send you the PDF, and for a little while I'm going to be offering actual physical signed free copies of this. They're $7 right now, but I'm going to have to raise the price. It's costing me too much, but I'll do it break even. Like, I want people to have this book and understand everything that I went through. And I spent years in prison, just so many things that so many don't bounce back from. And I did, and it's beyond humbling. And ever since that's happened, I'm here to serve. I do weekly guided meditations every week for the past 16 months. I do everything that I can to help people. So, thank you for letting me share all this. And again, like I said, it's just tip top, scratch the top of the iceberg. And my website, Seth Leaf, which is my first and middle name, Seth Leaf, like a leaf on a tree. My parents are hippies, yeah, obviously. SethLeaf.com. And if you go there, you can see all the meditations that I offer. And I always ask people on social media, like, what topics they want to focus on, because I make a bunch of short ones as well. Free. Everything's free. I do charge courses and a few things, but I am not in this for the money. I am in this because I know what I am. I would never try to tell anybody that I know who or what they are, but just from a very honest observational perspective, we all are related to this, and we all have to face it in our own way, in our own terms, and most people don't face it until they die. And it's a pity, because if we were focusing on this here, now, in these bodies, our quality of life would go up so much, because we would learn to value relationship. You know, first, relationship is to this life force energy. That's priority number one, to God, to the quantum field, to the creator of all reality. Like, that's priority number one. And then from there, with others who start to make that priority, we start forming community with others who make that commitment. And you can probably see where it's going. Like, you get enough individuals together who are consciously in tune with the source of their life force, and if we work together, then our value on relationships, again, with our life force, with each other, and with this world. When we form relationships, a relationship with our inner nature, then it's a lot easier to have the same relationship with the natural world. And then we don't want to buy cars and trucks and boats and trash and put these huge cities everywhere and destroy everything to do it. We don't need it. And when we have this experience of what we all are, we don't want it, because you just want to connect deeper to this life force. And in that is the power to bounce back and rise above anything, any adversity, anything that's held back. And it's actually really simple. It just takes building a habit to doing it. But from what I can tell, we're not going to solve all the issues of this world with the same level of ignorant thinking that created it in the first place. But if we come together in this way, anything is possible, because everything is a miracle. And the more that enough of us appreciate that, the more powerful and in love with life we'll become, and we'll want to help and serve each other. So thank you.